Mm. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Are you excited?
I am.
Okay, so do you know who has the slides?
Yeah, so I have them downloaded and I can share them.
Okay, and then Julian sent me some slides that I will be going over.
Those, they have a what?
That I will be oh yeah, I think
it's
okay, yeah, he sent me like the first few slides, which is the ones we discussed before.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, got it. So I'll be
Do
downloading.
you want me to share my screen, or is Julian sharing his?
You would have to share your screen, but then does that mean that they can still see you?
No, I have something that could happen. So definitely please know that if Zoom bombing does happen during this webinar, we will automatically shut the webinar off and send over a couple of resources your way that you could then follow up with us. And so with that said, I will kick it off to our panelists, and I would love to have them introduce themselves. So you can please each tell us your name, your title, your company, maybe the college that you attended, as well as your ethnicity, and let our audience know if you are a first generation, and also how you've been feeling during your stay-at-home orders at COVID-19. Why don't we have Jahaira start, and then we'll move on to Vanessa and Alex.
Hi, amigos. I am Yahaira Corona, and I am a Senior Diversity Inclusion Project Manager at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. I am a diversity and inclusion champion, an HR business partner, as well as a member of the Young Professionals Board. Identify as a proud Chicagoan, Boricua, and first generation Mexicana, and so happy to be able to share my experience with everyone today. I've been looking at the silver lining of the shelter in place and really enjoying spending time with my family, my husband, and my newborn, and enjoying the things that I love as cooking and finding some time now that the weather has broke to run. So enjoying all those things with everyone, but with my family.
All right.
Alex, how about you go next?
I can go ahead and go next. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Vanessa Martinez. I'm the Post-College Success Coordinator at DePaul University, and my role is exactly what it sounds like. It's helping our college students get ready for life after DePaul. Let's see. I am a first-generation college student. Very proud. It's a proud badge that I will always wear. And how I've been feeling it during this stay-at-home order, if I'm going to be completely honest, I'm a homebody anyway. So I didn't know that being a big of a homebody as I am actually isn't the norm. So business as usual for the most part for me, thankfully, I suppose.
Love it. Thanks, Vanessa. So my name is Alex Turcios. I'm currently in the management consulting and strategy space at Accenture. Like Yahaira, I also identify as a first-generation college student and Hondureña. I attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and come from a liberal arts background. So I graduated with a degree in political science and global studies and was able to make that pivot into the business and consulting world. What I've been doing during the stay-at-home, I think this is such a great time to kind of stop, pause, reflect, and recalibrate. So for me, I've been doing a lot of recharging, reading, hanging out at home, spending time with my loved ones. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful introductions. I do want to say that I'm excited because I see that we have folks joining us from Texas, California, New York, New Jersey, even Puerto Rico. So definitely a wide range of folks joining us today. And I do want to jump into some of the questions that the students have for us. And actually, Nuria from, it looks like Minnesota, has a question about what is the best way to prepare for virtual interviews, given that with COVID-19, many companies are now transitioned to virtual interviews versus having them in person. And It looks like Alex is bobbing her head, so if you would like to go ahead and kick us off, that would be great.
Yeah, so I actually went through a completely virtual experience with my hiring process at Accenture, and this was pre-COVID. So from first interview, which was on the phone, to my case study that was on video, the end-to-end process was virtual. And I think it's a great skill to master now because it's only going to get more normal and regular moving forward. So to me, I think there are so many great advantages to having a virtual setting. One, you can hide kind of your nervous tics behind the camera. Two, you can have sticky notes posted up everywhere and talking points that you want to hit on. And three, I think you can set your environment to one where you know that you'll thrive. So for me, even right now, I have my air diffuser going on and I'll light candles and get my space in a place where I know I'll be in the right mindset to present my best self. So to me, the three things that I would do to prepare virtually is have those sticky notes ready, set up your environment, and also get ready. You know, make yourself feel like you're walking into an office setting, and that'll help set the tone for when you enter that conversation. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Vanessa and Jahara, do y'all have any advice that you would like to input?
Yeah, I think Alex's tips are fantastic. I would add that you shouldn't prepare any less than you would for an in-person interview. So remember all the common courtesy things, right? Send that thank you note afterwards. Make sure that you're asking follow-up questions for your interviewees, and make sure that you are using this time to continue to ask questions from the hiring manager and the company themselves. One key question that you should be asking now is, how have you treated your employees during the COVID pandemic? What are some of the benefits that you have, and how can you support me in a remote environment? And I think in that question will really help you determine if this is going to be a right place for you to want to intern or work in the future.
Yeah, I love that point, Yahaira, that it's so important to ask those follow-up questions. As much as you're getting interviewed by the employer, you're also interviewing them and making sure that it's the right cultural fit and things of that matter.
Yeah, these are all wonderful tips. And just on a more practical basis, you want to start getting set up for your interview at least 15 minutes before your actual interview time, in case you have any internet issues, if for a number of reasons, right? You don't want to be figuring out your camera situation 2 minutes before you're supposed to go live, right? So making sure that you have a quiet environment. I'll tell you right now what I did. I told my mom, I'm going live at 12. Please watch the dog. Please put up the gate. Like, please, no noise in this background. So if it's with your partner or your family, if someone can watch your little ones. And you know what? If it happens, right? This is a time where we're all giving each other a lot of grace, but to the best of our ability to make sure that we can mitigate those instances is something we definitely want to make sure we're doing. Also making sure that your computer is propped up on something so that you're looking at the camera, right? You don't want to rest your computer on your lap and then have you looking down. It's not a flattering angle anyway, but it just doesn't look right. And so making sure that you're looking directly at the camera, that you feel good, you have your background is appropriate, right? Don't feel like you have to go above and beyond to stage something. But like the other panelists, that's absolutely fine. But if you have maybe a concert poster or something else in your background that might be distracting or perhaps even inappropriate, being mindful of that when you're in front of a camera.
Thank you, everyone. So this next question that we're getting from Hope, I would definitely say it's something that a lot of college students probably struggle with, but how do you get an internship or your first job without having job experiences? What are things that they can talk about during that first interview? Vanessa, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can get us started. I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly for college students and recent grads, to feel like you need to have this really robust background. But you're interviewing for an entry-level position, so the person who is interviewing you knows that, right? They know that you aren't going to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner and that you haven't written a book, probably. And so having managed expectations for yourself going in, right? And so with that said, that also means think of the projects that you may have worked on when you were an undergrad. Was Were you supporting someone on a volunteer basis? Were you doing research for their project, or were you helping on someone's website, right, just for free because you could and you wanted to, and someone asked you for a favor? Those are technical skills that you have that you can bring to the table. Think about maybe perhaps you worked retail jobs when you were in college, and a lot of students feel like there isn't any value in having worked in the retail industry or the food industry, but I couldn't disagree more, right? That's customer service, that's direct contact, that's troubleshooting, that's teamwork. There's a lot of really awesome soft skills that come from those experiences, and truthfully, hard skills you can learn. Soft skills, those can make or break you. And so I would say definitely look at your background and your soft skills and really work on amplifying those and showing why you are an asset to the team that you are applying to belong to.
Yeah, I want to build off that point. I think in my experience working with others that people are more interested in your passion and the interests that you bring to the field. Like Vanessa said, hard skills are learned, but you can't replace work ethic. And so it's not all about the credentials. It's more about how you build your narrative and draw upon your experiences from undergrad. So think about things you might have done for extracurriculars, any clubs you're part of, any leadership opportunities that you were given on campus. And then also, I love the point about not dismissing retail experience. I worked in retail throughout my entire college journey, and I totally agree. It teaches you how to work with others, troubleshoot, time management. I mean, you're juggling how many classes and working on the side. That's a really valuable trait to bring out during your interviews. So the other point I'll point to is if you did like a senior thesis project, those take a year to do, and that shows tremendous amount of grit and tenacity to be able to get through that. So that's another area that you can highlight during your interviews, and any data analytics that you might have used to put that story together, the project together. So just keep that into consideration, and don't put down any of your accomplishments because you might think that it won't be received well. It's your story and you should own it.
And to close, I think hiring managers and internship programs are expecting to hear from you, from your school work. And it really is going to show more of your character, how you're working with families, multiple siblings, dealing with your parents. How are you able to work in teams, project teams, have communication with your professors or your other roles. So if you're not sharing those type of stories, it's going to raise eyebrows. So really be authentic to what you have done and how you've done it, and it'll really showcase more all of your skill sets than trying to pull things out of the bag that you haven't done before. So that level setting, they're willing and they're excited to hear about those experiences.
That's a really great point, Jahira. I was actually a part of an interview very recently where one of the examples of ways that they've learned how to compromise, and the person that we were interviewing talked about being a middle child and having 9 siblings, and so really learning how to be calm in stressful situations, given that she was the middle child, and consistently had to handle both sides of the family. And so it's actually a really great segue to our next question. Folks are wondering, what do you think is the biggest misconception that folks might have in the interview process?
I can go ahead and start. I love this question because I feel like there are these unspoken rules in the recruiting process, and I'd love to shed light into that. So for me, throughout my recruiting process, the biggest misconception is that you need direct experience in the field that you're applying to and in the role, and you need to check off every single check mark off of the role description, and you don't. There's research out there that shows that men apply to jobs when they meet 50% of the criteria versus women who apply when they reach 80 to 100% of the criteria that is required at the job. To reiterate the point from earlier, there's so much on-the-job learning that happens, and it's more about those soft skills and how you bring those to the forefront and highlight your strengths and your passion. So like for me, I come from a liberal arts background, and I pivoted into business and into a more technical role. I didn't have prior experience doing that, But in my free time, I went on to do certificate programs, online training. I did a lot of informational interviews to learn from other people about what skills are most valuable in the field. And then I just went for jobs that I was, on paper underqualified for. But in reality, I had all these other soft skills that the employer was interested in that made me qualified. And so I think just keeping an open mindset and not limiting yourself and boxing yourself to the major or your experiences that you've cultivated so far, and having this open mindset of, I'm not there yet, but I'm working my way there, and other people see that, definitely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would also add, don't underestimate the value of being yourself and bringing your authentic self to the interview. I can't tell you how many times in previous organizations and previous roles when I have been part of interview processes where we are interviewing to fill positions in our organization, and someone looks great on paper, even a phone interview, they sound really great, and then they come in and just something's off, right? Either like they're really intense or they're trying really hard to be like ultra professional and say all the right things, and they sound very rehearsed and great, right? But also, like, I love that you're qualified and I love that you're all of these things, but like, you're also going to be our teammate, right? And we want to make sure that you are a cultural fit and an organizational fit, and you're going to blend in and do well with the team, that those dynamics are there. And it's super, super important. I always personally really, really value when people bring their personalities and bring themselves. Obviously it's a given to be appropriate, but being yourself, I think that goes a long way. And again, like a lot of parts of a job description are coachable, right? So maybe especially as a recent grad, maybe you are missing some of the preferred qualifications, but you know what, if you have a great attitude and you fit in really well with the team, someone will coach you. It's fine. It's doable.
I love that point, and it kind of takes the pressure off of fitting this mold of like I have to fit every, check mark every box off. And that's not the case. And I love that you mentioned that these are your teammates at the end of the day. They might have superiority, in the hierarchy over you, but they're your teammates, and people want to work with people that are likable and that are trainable and are willing to learn. So great point, Vanessa.
I think most of our panelists actually touched on a really important point, which is relationship building, which I know can be very hard during COVID-19. So what are really great pieces of advice that you can give the students who are listening in terms of what are ways to develop relationships during this time, as well as what are good ways to network while you're job searching or getting ready to graduate from college during this time?
Yeah, Haida, you're muted.
I can start, Nancy. So we want to be able to leverage technology in the best way possible. I think during this pandemic, people are more willing and more inclined to like pick up the phone and start those conversations. So I would suggest beginning with a plan, right? Like each week I want to be able to contact at least 3 or 4 individuals and introduce myself, share with them what my career goals and aspirations are, and see if they're willing to have a 15 to 20 minute virtual coffee chat conversation with me. And more than likely, people are going to reach out and be like, hey, yes, I would love to hear about you and share with you about my experience. And you'll notice that those 15 to 20 minute conversations soon become 30-minute conversations. And from there, those individuals may suggest other individuals that you can reach out to their network. And you'll begin to notice that your network is starting to become larger and larger and larger. I know we'll talk a little bit about social media in a later question, but continuing to follow up and have a really crafted message that shares what you're interested, who you are, and what information you want to take away from this conversation. after that, follow up with the thank you, express your gratitude for connecting you with other individuals. And also, if you say that you're going to follow up, put a tickler on your own calendar, on your iPhone, that maybe in 3 months from now, you're going to connect with that individual just to give them an update on your progress and what has been going on with your life. And you may find out that they're going to be interested in following up with you, and then probably redirect you to another person. And that's how you begin relationship building, right? And those probably phone calls become in-person meetings in the future. They become constant people just sharing articles, and you'll soon begin to develop that at a young age, your network becomes large. And I personally feel that where I am in my career, a lot of the relationships happen because where I started as a recent undergrad. So you leverage technology, leverage those people in your network, and don't be afraid to ask out and meet someone new.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that point that, shifting from a transactional conversation to building a long-term relationship goes a long way. And people are going to be more willing to bend over backwards and do favors for you in the future. So just keep that human element to it when you're having these conversations. And, some of these might evolve into something more, not in a weird way, but like something like a mentorship, right? Where they can guide you and you will have this lifelong relationship with them. So starting off with the end goal in mind and taking every conversation you have as a learning opportunity, even if it doesn't land you an interview or a job, just relish in the fact that you're getting to learn someone's life story and lessons they've learned along the years.
Yeah, and to Yahaira's point about really leveraging LinkedIn, something that I hear a lot from students and young adults in general is I feel like I'm a creep when I'm on LinkedIn because I'm pointing to something very specific on someone's profile. And I would really love to change the narrative around that. That's this idea around creeping, right? Like perhaps that's creeping on Facebook or on Instagram or on someone's Snapchat, maybe, but for LinkedIn, that is exactly what the platform is for, right? The expectation is that you look someone up and look at their background and then you ask very specific questions. That is, not only is that okay, that is the norm and that is the expectation. So please don't feel like you are being weird because you know someone's job history. You know someone's job history because they volunteered that and they put that out there and they want others to know, right? So when you enter the LinkedIn platform, it is because you are looking to connect professionally with other people. So it's absolutely okay if you were to send me a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, Vanessa, I saw that you used to work at a nonprofit and now you're working in higher ed. How did you make that leap? I would never think you're a creep. I knew that you did your research, you put in the time and you looked at my LinkedIn and you asked a very thoughtful question, right? That's not creeping.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I think everyone really touched base on one of the questions that actually just came up from Franklin. So how much of a role does who you know versus what you know play in your careers? And so I think, a lot of folks really touch on that relationship building aspect. And so I think oftentimes we assume that folks who have a bigger network will get the part, but really I think it's folks who have taken the time to build relationships, because when folks on the hiring committee are then thinking about who are really great individuals to pull in for this role, they're thinking of folks that might have connected with them on LinkedIn. They're thinking of folks that, oh, I remember this person had a really great interest in nonprofits, like Vanessa mentioned. And so that is how you start to build that network that Yahaira was talking about. And that is how you start to being a part of both. They get to know what you know, as well as they get to know who you are as a person. And so I would love to transition into talking about the imposter syndrome, because this is definitely something that I felt as a first generation student, and I think that I still feel sometimes as a first generation professional. That first generation identity doesn't leave once you graduate from college, right? And so as we know, the imposter syndrome is definitely developing feelings of doubt in terms of, are you the best fit for this role? Are you the best person for this next position? And so it makes you feel like you are a fraud and you're consistently feeling like you might be exposed. And it's so, the imposter syndrome talks a lot about feeling like we might not be enough for the next position. And so I know that I've consistently felt this throughout my entire career journey, and it's something even to this day that I make sure that I fight against. And so I would love to hear advice from our panelists in terms of how they have encountered the imposter syndrome in their career journey and how they fight against it in the interview process. Does anyone like to start?
I can go ahead and start. I'll just note that imposter syndrome doesn't go away regardless of your level in your career. There's always going to be an inkling of self-doubt, and the way to break free from that is, I think, preparation really helps, and being really confident with your story, your narrative, and owning your experiences versus maybe being ashamed of it or thinking that you're not enough, because you are. And two, I want you to remember when you're at that table, you're there for a reason. You were hand selected out of a set of people for a reason, and you bring something valuable to the table. So, it's really sad to me when I see people downplay their accomplishments. And I think it's also a little natural in the Latino culture where, we want to be humble, and we might be the first out of our family to sit at one of these tables. I know I'm the first in my family to work in corporate America, and I'm navigating this space and learning as I go. And that's okay. I think just remembering that you bring value, and not to downplay your accomplishments, and to not, shut yourself down because you might make someone else feel uncomfortable. And I know in my career, I did that when I first graduated from college. I would always think about how I may be making someone else feel uncomfortable, but you have to focus on, bringing your talents to the table, no matter how it makes other people feel, right?
I think those are excellent points. And I would say that imposter syndrome is evolving, right? And I think as an individual, you choose those pieces that you want to tackle one at a time. For myself, I started with my name. This is how I'm going to say my name. This is how I'm going to expect other individuals to say my name. Then it began seeking mentors. I want to identify another Latina who is in a managerial role, who I can look up to and talk about their career and see what they have experienced. Then it was like, I want to serve on a nonprofit board. I want to be able to understand what it's going to take in that way to add value. And then just little by little, I'm tackling little pieces of, hey, this is who I am. This is the value that I bring. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but as you become more comfortable, as you start gaining, experience in the workplace, volunteering, and then giving back, you'll be able to share those, experiences like I am here with all of you today, of like, this is what works for me. This is how you can handle, and you'll begin to start owning it. So it's something that doesn't happen overnight, but little by little, you'll begin to tackle and know that you should be there. You're deserving of this, and any organization, any company, and any person who comes across your path is worthy to know you.
Yeah, those are all excellent pieces of advice. And this is something that feels very relevant for me, because as I just mentioned a little while ago, that I made a leap from the nonprofit world to higher ed. And though there are certainly similarities, there are some things that felt very different and very new. And I often question myself, like, what am I doing here? It's a matter of time before they realize that, like, they made a mistake. And I had to do the work to be okay with taking up space, right? Like, I'm new, and I'm allowed to make mistakes, and I'm allowed to ask questions, and I'm allowed to be unsure, and I'm allowed to be okay with that. And I had this like kind of turning point a few months ago. There's this movie on there's a documentary on Netflix, and it's about I forgot the name of the documentary, but basically there's this scene where AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is kind of like getting herself ready to go into a meeting or to some intimidating space, and she said, I'll read it to you what she said, I'm experienced enough to do this, I am not knowledgeable enough to do this, I am prepared enough to do this, I am mature enough to do this, and I am brave enough to do this. And those are just affirmations that she said to herself, and that was a very powerful moment for me, because it felt very relevant. And I do that also when I'm going into scary meetings. Like, I can do hard things. I can do this. I'm ready for this. I know what I'm doing. And I don't always believe it in the moment, but just saying that is a very powerful experience.
Definitely. I'm definitely say affirmations to myself before walking into a meeting, or I'll like do my little power pose. But it works and it helps shift your mindset into this powerful, like, I'm capable mindset.
I think everyone touched on a little bit about the resources that they use to kind of conquer that imposter syndrome feeling. And I think for me, it was definitely realizing that feedback is a gift and it's valuable. And it's okay if I may not be super prepared for an interview, but if I ask for feedback in advance in terms of what is the best way to practice, then that definitely helps me. And so actually, this is something that I did most recently. I reached out to my mentors as well as even my partner and asked them to practice interviewing with me when I was up for a promotion. And so it was a really great way for me to get immediate feedback and apply it when I was preparing for the interview. And I would love to hear about a little bit more about resources that our panelists have used. So what has been the most impactful or important resource that you used during your first job search?
LinkedIn. There's so many wonderful opportunities on there. I got one of my internships off of LinkedIn during college. I found out about my first job opportunity through there. Also, leveraging your university resources and alumni centers and advisors. I got recommended it was an internship with the lieutenant governor a few years back, and I learned about that because I was recommended by my advisor. I know Vanessa can probably speak more about those resources. But to go back to LinkedIn, I mean, making sure that you have a polished profile as far as having a clear photo, making sure that you highlight the top skills that you have obtained and acquired. LinkedIn also has certificates that are available for free. So once you complete it, it posts on your profile, and that helps to bolster your profile. And then get recommendations from people, because I think we touched on this, but LinkedIn is meant to be creeped on, and recruiters use it actively, and they use it to vet candidates. So the more testimonials and credentials that you can add to that, the better you'll position yourself to be successful in getting a job or an interview.
Yeah, I treated looking for a job as a part-time job. And so that meant for me finding an accountability with my best friend, an accountability buddy with my best friend. She was looking for a job at the same time. So twice a week, we would meet up at the same coffee shop, and we did it religiously. It was, I think, from 11 to 2, we would sit down and just look for jobs and apply, or we would reach out to people. It was just like designated time for us to work on that part of our lives. And it was, we hardly spoke. Actually, we share a table, and we just showed up at the same time. And it was just something to keep us consistent and accountable. And the stars aligned for us around the same time, because we actually got jobs within a couple weeks of each other, different industries, completely different things. But it was just a way to hold us accountable and make sure that we're showing up and putting in the work. And it's a numbers game, right? So you have to put in the applications. And I wish there was like a secret sauce, but you just got to do it.
You know what's helpful too? I've learned in the algorithm that if you apply within the first day of it being posted, you have, it's like a 60% higher chance of your resume being viewed by a recruiter. So keep that timeline in mind. And if it's been posted for like 3 weeks already, go ahead and submit it, but they might already be interviewing candidates. So keeping that realistic expectation is important.
Yeah, I mean, job searching is exhausted, so I'm gonna keep it real. And it's, as Vanessa mentioned, it's putting your effort in there, but it's exhausting, right? So as you're preparing for it, there's certain things that you can do ahead of time, right? Like making sure your resume is clear. If there's certain roles that you're targeting, you might have different versions of your resume. And so have those ready so that you can meet that timeline that Alex is talking about within that 1 week period. And so you don't, when you see a job post, have to spend the time recreating your resume so it fits it. I think there is enough roles out on LinkedIn or in Google in general that can help you create different resume versions, as well as your cover letters. You want to have something, a template already in place that you can add the dear and the individual's name, change the dates, and add maybe a couple of different points, but you want to have those templates ready, as well as like your thank you notes, have those ready, because it just can be exhausting. And the more time that you can spend in that network and having those conversations versus actually doing the administrative pieces of it will save you a lot of time. So keep those things in mind as you're out there looking, and be prepared that it is common that the landing a job might not happen for a few months or a few weeks. And I know that that may be disappointing if you're looking for something for the summer or for the fall. Just be understanding that that right role, that right job, that right fit may not come within your first couple of job searches, and it's just going to be taking a while. So do your due diligence, put the time in, have everything already prepared, and it will come.
Jahaira made a really good point about having different resumes, definitely highlighting the skills or the positions that you're looking for. I, for example, have a resume that's focused on my D&I initiatives, and I also have a resume that's focused on my event planning background. So depending on the roles that I'm looking at, that is the resume that I choose to move forward with. And that is definitely something that's common, as they talked about. And I think we started talking a little bit about social branding, networking, and LinkedIn. So it is a really great piece of advice that you would give to our college students, as well as our first generation professionals that are looking to build a professional brand on social media. Alex, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. So for me, I think what would be helpful to someone looking to build their professional brand is to think about the 3 words you want someone to remember you by. So if you want to come across as very analytical focused, you're going to want to highlight that. And then I would also recommend just having a cohesive image online. So the type of language that you're using, making sure that it's consistent, cohesive, they build off of each other, the experiences that you have, and you highlight metrics is really important. That's something that I have definitely struggled with in the past, and I've learned more and more to own my accomplishments and put numbers behind it and show the impact of what I've done. And then as far as like basic housekeeping of online, have a clear photo that's recent and have it as professional as possible. You know, clear back, you know, it could be a brick wall, it could be like a plain colored background like Vanessa has. You can use your iPhone. Nowadays, the camera on there is really good. And I'm gonna spill my secret, but the photo I have on the slide you see was taken on an iPhone. So you don't need any professional equipment to get a nice looking photo that you can use for your professional headshot. Don't let that be a barrier to you putting something out there. And then I would recommend having a peer review, have someone take a look at it, provide feedback from a variety of industries. It's not just in the field that you're looking to get into. They might have some interesting perspective to add.
I think that's fantastic. And I would add, as we talked a bit earlier about the creepiness. So you want to make sure that any of your social media platforms all show your most authentic and best self. So have a friend and someone that you can trust to really give you the real truth. Do a search on you. What does it look like when you search for me on Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok? What are the types of things that you're seeing? And if there are areas that you need to kind of clean up, make sure you do that as you're preparing for your job search. Because as an individual in the human resources industry, like we're looking, right? Like we're looking, I'm like, let's see what this individual is really about. And that's going to tell me more about who you are than what your resume says. So have an accountability partner, as Vanessa mentioned, who's going to really go and creep you and see what really comes up on the 3rd or 4th page of our Google search. And that's what the information that the recruiters are really looking into.
I would also say don't be scared to share what you're currently doing and are up to in your LinkedIn profile. So oftentimes I'll share events that I'm attending, events I'm collaborating on, or any opportunities that I see coming up that may be available to folks in my community. And I love sharing this stuff because not only does it show what I'm currently involved in, but it also shows what's important to you and where you found your passion. This next question is kind of a fun one, but it's also an interesting one. I oftentimes, especially when I'm interviewing first generation students or just folks that are very early on in their professional career, there's obviously a room in the interview where they're asked if they have any additional questions. And there is sometimes where I get the, actually, I don't have any additional questions. But I feel like a professional looks better if they do have additional questions to ask during the interview process. So what are great questions that you would suggest asking during that first interview, asking the potential folks that might be interviewing them or the folks that might be their future colleagues?
I love this question because I similarly with young professionals, this is like a really classic like rookie mistake where I think the idea is, well, I don't want to ask any questions because then it sounds like I wasn't paying attention, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I say always go in prepared with at least 3 to 5 questions that you're going to ask when it's your turn to ask, because and I say 3 to 5 sounds like a lot, and you probably won't even ask all of those. But the reason I say 3 to 5 is because sometimes some of your questions will be answered throughout the interview. And so you don't want to get to the end of the interview and say, no, I don't have any questions. And so as far as coming up with questions, do your research. Don't ask questions that where the answer is easily found on the website. It means that you didn't do your due diligence. Do your research and ask questions that demonstrate that you've done some critical thinking and research and you're thinking ahead. So where do you see this department in the next 3 to 5 years? Or I see that this company recently went through a merger. Can you tell me a little bit more about how this is impacting employees or something like that? Worst comes to worst, people love to talk about themselves. So ask something like, what's your favorite part of your job? Or where do you see, I see that you're the leader. How do you see yourself leading this department through the next phase of development? Or something like that, right? But the classic easy go-to, ask people about themselves because people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah, most definitely. And I would say it's okay to ask questions about what areas do they see an improvement so you can add value. So what process improvement do you see that needs to happen within the next 60 to 90 days? And depending on what the answer is, you can follow up probably with a skill set or an idea that you might have to make that better. Ask them also what the challenges are. And we talked about earlier about how they're interviewing you to see if you're a fit for the organization. You're also interviewing them. Like, is this the boss that I want to work with? Are these the teammates that I want to work with? Do I see myself here? Are these the benefits that fit with my lifestyle, with my interests? So as you're talking, and if they've answered all of your questions, ask get to know you questions. Like, what's your management style like? How do you like to work in teams? What are ways that you effectively communicate? What are some of the tools that you use to get your work done? And then you can highlight like, oh, those tools I feel comfortable with, or man, that's a really great manager. That's someone who I want to work with, or I could really learn a lot from this teammate. They're going to add value to my skill set. So have fun with it. Show that you're interested in them as well. And they're going to leave that interview with you being like, you know what? They really asked really great questions about who I am. And I feel like I will learn more about them and they might be a really good fit. So you'll see a greater impact that way.
I think you two hit it, right? Bullseye answers. I'll just add that the question segment, it's to clarify any questions you might have, but 2, the real reason people ask this and how you should use it is to clarify any of your skills that you might not have gotten the opportunity to highlight in the original set of questions. So ask what tools that they use, what technology, and then highlight what experience you have in XYZ tools. That it might not be the same tool, but it has the same logic behind the tool and it'll be easily transferred. And then I love the leadership question. You want to see how your working style will mesh with your manager's working style and if it's compatible. And then I would ask about the dynamics of the team, and also if you're interested in culture and you're a social person, you want to hear about, well, what type of team building activities do you guys have? What professional development opportunities? Do you sponsor your employees to do trainings or attend conferences? Give me an idea of how I can expect to grow in this role.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think a counter to that question is, how would you answer the "what is your biggest weakness" question?
I think no one likes this question. Let's just level set there. I think, again, we have to think about, why is someone asking this question in the first place? So I think they want to know how you perceive yourself, your self-awareness, and your humility, and your ability to identify a problem and how you're going to solve that, what steps you're taking to help, help mitigate what you're going through. So one example that I'll share with you to make it more concrete is, let's say you say your biggest weakness is that you have a hard time saying no. And as a result, you have a work-life balance that isn't making you happy and you feel stressed a lot of the time. So how can you flip that weakness into a strength is the strategy that you might go for. So you can say, I've identified this problem that I have a hard time saying no, I want to jump on everything and be helpful and a people pleaser. However, I'm taking steps to carve out time within my schedule, and I've started to block out time in my calendar for 30 minutes to recalibrate, to do meditation, to go on a walk, to take my lunch breaks. It shows that you're aware that you're not perfect and that you're a growing, evolving human, and you know how to problem solve. And that speaks volumes as to how you might solve a business problem or company problem in the future.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, right? That question is, we know you're not perfect, right? And so I think it's also like critical thinking, right? How are you going to air out what you're not great at? And so I think like Alex hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it, right? And so in short, it's like, where do you need a little growth? But most importantly, what are you doing about it? That's what I'm more interested in, right? Because I know you're not perfect. So tell me what you're doing about your weakness to do better. That's what I care about.
Our last question for today, and I think it's definitely also one of the most important ones, is, would you negotiate during this climate, and how should you negotiate?
Yes, yes, yes. So I cannot stress that enough. Negotiation is a normal and common part of the career search process. So for you, it is uncomfortable. I'm still uncomfortable with negotiating. So it is a practice trait. However, for a recruiter, they are used to negotiating on a daily basis. So don't undervalue yourself during the career process. Companies should be upfront about what the salary ranges are. And if you've done some research, you should have an expectation of what that range should be and where you stand in that level of skill sets. While you're interviewing, a lot of things come up. The scope of work might change. You might notice it might be bigger. You can still add value to that. Like your skills, more of your skill sets are going to be used in that role. And so when the negotiation piece comes, they're going to offer something to you. And the recruiter or the hiring manager will give you a number, and depending on how you feel, you can take that back and negotiate something between 5 and 20%. But that's not the only thing that you can negotiate. The recruiter may come back and say that, hey, this is a hard number, but and especially in this age that we're in, there's a lot of other things that you can negotiate, such as work-life flexibility, some benefits, some vacation time. So think about what's important to you in the company and the benefits and the salary, and negotiate in that manner. A tip: going into it, have someone that you can practice your talking points with. And as a young professional and someone going into the workforce, I know that you negotiate a lot with your parents, with your peers, with your partner. So count on those people to practice your negotiation with. And the recruiter will come back and you'll find that together you're going to reach a happy medium. And if that's satisfactory to you and what you feel that you're worth and something that you feel that will be worth your time in that company, then I think that that's a win.
Yeah, and something that I hear, Yahaira, that's excellent. And something that I hear a lot from students, particularly Latinx students, is I'm afraid to negotiate because what if my offer is rescinded? That's not going to happen. And in the event that it does, that's a huge red flag. That is a huge red flag about company culture, company values, and that the negotiation piece, that is an expectation of the job offer. And so if you are nervous and you panic, you can just say, thank you so much for your offer. Could I have 48 to 72 hours or however long you need to think about this offer, and then go to your mentor or go to someone who you trust, reach out to one of us and ask us, like, how do I handle this conversation? So don't undersell yourself because you're afraid to ask for more. So how we've been told, many of us when we were little, calladita te ves más bonita, throw that out the door because now we're talking about your money. And so don't be afraid to ask for more.
I'll just add that the answer will always be no if you don't ask, and to just get comfortable with having these uncomfortable conversations because they're going to continue to happen and they're going to get more uncomfortable as you go up the career ladder. So it's great practice, and every opportunity you get to negotiate, it's a learning lesson. So learn about yourself, about the company, all of that. I'll share 2 tools that I use before I even go into the negotiation, and that is payscale.com and LinkedIn Salary, which is a new feature that was launched 2 years ago. Those are both free. Type in your the role name, the location that you're in, and you can compare it to other peers who have reported their salary. You want to go in not saying, hey, I deserve a raise or I deserve more because I'm me, right? You want to a solid business case behind it. So highlighting, here are the credentials and here's the past experience I bring into this role that you don't currently have. And so I'm going to become an integral part of your team, and you're going to get a huge return on investment by giving me a 5% raise. It's a drop in the bucket for you, but it means a lot to me. And it's going to make me, come in strong and hit the ground running. So when you phrase it with like those numbers and in that business case, then it makes your case stronger and lets the recruiter, take a step back and really consider it. And I love that Yahaira mentioned that you don't have to only focus on the salary, get more sick days. Especially in this climate, you're at an advantage to get more work from home flexibility. So use that. Vacation days, you can even look into if they have mid-year reviews and if you can get reviewed for a promotion earlier. That's all negotiable. So take a close look at whatever contract they send over and see where you find that happy medium between yourself and the HR individuals.
I completely agree with everything that our panelists have said today. I also would say that when I was first starting to think about what negotiation skills I wanted, I actually reached out to my career center on campus, and this was as an alumni. And so oftentimes they'll have these services available to you both as a current student and as a recent alum, and you can attend negotiation, either webinars or courses. And so definitely feel free to reach back out to them to see what resources they have available to you. And finally, I would love to give just a round of applause to all of our panelists today for joining us and answering your questions. Don't feel like the conversation has to end today. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach back out to any of us on LinkedIn. We'd be more than happy to offer advice as well as any resources we might have. I also want to make a quick little plug to the resources that OSSET has. We do have a job search function on the OSSET website. And if you liked everything that we had to say here today, definitely sign up for the virtual career fair that's coming up. It'll be an easy way to connect you in real time with employers, just from the comfort of your home or your office via desktop, laptop, or even your smartphone. And so it's also a really great way to start building that network and start looking into the positions that you might want in the future. And so once again, I just want to make sure that I thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said, we had several different folks from different states visiting us today, and don't feel like the conversation has to end here. Definitely reach back out to any of us on LinkedIn, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nancy.
Bye, everyone.
We're still on the line. The Federal Reserve will be at the HACE Career Fair next week. So looking forward to speaking with many of you there. And for those who are recent graduates or still looking for internships, the Federal Reserve will start recruiting for our 2021 season in the fall. So I'm part of your network. Thanks for having me.